Dad, please don't stand near the photo area. They said you don't fit the family's image. Those were the first words my son Connor spoke to me on Christmas Day of 2024, the day he got married, the day I believed a father would still have a place somewhere in the joy of his child's new beginning. But in a single breath, the warmth I carried into that grand hall turned to ice. I had come to my son's wedding with the kind of quiet pride only a 66-year-old man can hold after a lifetime spent surviving storms without applause. Connor Porter, the boy I raised alone, the boy whose smile carried me through 10 years of widowhood, was starting a life of his own. And I truly believed in the softest corner of my heart that there would be space for me in that celebration. I wore my old suit, pressed, clean, respectful. In my pocket, I carried a small wooden box inside it, the bracelet Connor and I made together 2 decades ago when life was simpler and love felt unshakable. My plan was gentle hand it to him before he walked down the aisle. A father's blessing. A final anchor to where he came from. But the moment I stepped inside the Devon family's wedding hall, I realized the script I had written in my mind was not the one they intended for me. The check-in attendant looked at me the way people look at someone who wandered into the wrong celebration. "Mr. Porter, is that right? Your name isn't on the main seating list. Please wear this silver band, overflow guest." I froze. Overflow guest. The father of the groom, categorized as extra inventory. Before I could form a question, the wedding coordinator whispered to another staff member, soft but sharp enough to split through every laugh in the hall. "Mrs. Devon said he must not stand near the photo area. He doesn't fit the family's image." Doesn't fit. 2 words colder than the snowstorm raging outside. 2 words sharp enough to reopen every wound I spent years stitching shut. They escorted me to a lonely table tucked beside the service area, a place where carts rattled, where the ice machine clattered like brittle bones, where no one would look twice if a forgotten father disappeared into the shadows. I set the wooden box on the stainless steel table. The metal stole the warmth from my hands as though the night itself wanted me to feel the chill. I swallowed hard. Shame tastes metallic, I learned that early in life. Hurt tastes bitter. That evening, I tasted both. From my corner I could see the Devon family glowing in the golden wash of chandelier light, silk dresses, polished smiles, laughter that echoed with entitlement. And then, I saw my son. Connor glanced toward me, just for a heartbeat, just long enough for recognition to spark. Then he turned away, quickly, deliberately, as though acknowledging me might fracture the image the Devons hoped to display. 10 years of widowhood had taught my heart how to live with quiet loneliness. But watching my own son, my only child, refuse to meet my eyes, that carved a wound far deeper, far quieter, and far more permanent. I sat there breathing slow, trying to fold myself into the smallest version of me. Life had trained me to be unobtrusive, invisible, unproblematic. It's strange how quickly old training resurfaces when humiliation is laid neatly at your feet. And just when the moment began to sink its claws into me, a hand touched my shoulder. Not the cold grip of pity, a familiar hand, steady, warm, carrying the weight of a past I thought I had left behind. "Jack Porter, is that really you?" I turned. There standing before me was Marcus Hale, a man I hadn't seen in nearly 20 years. He didn't avert his eyes. He didn't smirk. He didn't whisper. He looked straight at me with something no one else in that glittering room had offered me all evening: respect. And in that moment, something shifted in the air. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with the same subtle force that changes the course of a river over a lifetime of erosion. What the Devons did not know, what not a single one of them could have predicted, was that Marcus Hale was the kind of man who carried influence quietly like a loaded chamber you never hear click. The moment he stepped in front of my lonely table, the Devon wedding and the Devon Realty empire behind it began to tilt in a direction none of them ever anticipated. Because I am Jack Porter, 66 years old, widower, former bank employee, a man who has spent years believing that silence keeps the peace and kindness earns a seat at the table. But that Christmas day, seated beside an ice machine and a stack of serving trays, I finally understood something I should have learned long ago. Children do not always stand on the side of their parents, but justice, quiet, patient, and sharp, sometimes does. Before I continue, I know you're listening from somewhere. Maybe you're folding laundry, driving through early morning traffic, or lying awake in the soft dark wondering why sleep doesn't come as easily as it used to. Wherever you are, I'd like to know. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. And if this story has kept your attention this long, feel free to like, share, and subscribe, because believe me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. The snow was falling harder when I followed Marcus out of the service area. Lake Forest Estate, where the Devons hosted the wedding, glowed like a crystal palace under the winter sky. Everything was flawless, golden lights wrapped around oak trees, a stone fireplace warming the entrance, violins echoing through the grand hall. Everything except my place in it. Marcus looked at me from head to toe, irritation flashing across his face. They really sat you back here. I gave a tired half smile. I didn't want to cause trouble on my son's big day. Marcus exhaled the kind of long, heavy breath men take when they've witnessed too many quiet injustices. Jack, you've taken more hits in life than anyone I know, and you never complain. I didn't answer. A small group of guests passed us and immediately bowed their heads respectfully to Marcus, one of the most influential investors in Chicago. Their eyes flicked toward me, confused, surprised, even uneasy. They were wondering why a man like Marcus Hale was standing beside an overflow guest stationed near the kitchen doors. "I thought you moved to Arizona," Marcus said. "Thought you'd never come back to Chicago." "I still have Connor," I replied softly. "He's all I've got." "Does he know where they put you?" Silence. My silence was enough. Marcus clenched his jaw. Above the soft music and laughter, a sharp sound rang out. Champagne glasses clinking, followed by Patricia Devon's bright, piercing laugh. I saw her standing under the chandelier, shimmering in a silver sequin gown, surrounded by business executives and high-profile financial names. She noticed me, and her expression shifted, not disgust, but the look someone gives a stain on a white tablecloth. Marcus saw it too. He murmured, "Beautiful wedding. Shame the family's integrity doesn't match." I let out a humorless chuckle. "That's the upper class for you." Marcus turned to me, serious, steady. "No, Jack. I know the difference between elegance and cruelty." The wedding coordinator walked toward us, her face draining of color when she recognized Marcus. "Mr. Hale, sir, you're here." Why Marcus cut her off? Why was the groom's father placed next to the service area? She swallowed hard. The seating chart was changed. I only followed instructions from who? Marcus's voice turned cold. She glanced around, panicked. I can't say, sir." Marcus looked at me, something sharp and knowing in his eyes, as if the last 15 years suddenly made sense to him. "Jack," he said quietly, "would you like to walk back inside with me?" I looked down at the wooden box in my hands. The bracelet Connor made when he was 8. The only gift I had for him tonight. I thought about how he avoided my eyes, how he let this happen, how easily a single wristband labeled overflow guest had erased me from the front row of my own son's life. Then I lifted my head. I think I said slowly, "It's time I stopped sitting back here." Marcus smiled, not a joyful smile, but the smile of a man who knows a storm is finally turning in the right direction. We walked into the grand hall. Golden lights reflected off the marble floor like a stage being prepared for the next act. Marcus's footsteps echoed sharp, distinct, and a hush fell over a whole corner of the room. Every head turned toward us. They didn't know it yet. But from that moment on, the Devon wedding would never unfold the way they intended. And their lives were about to enter a new chapter, one where I, Jack Porter, would no longer be the man sitting by the service area. Marcus pulled out a chair and sat beside me right there at the cold stainless steel table meant for stacking dirty trays. His eyes dropped to the silver wristband on my arm. The words "overflow guest" gleamed under the lights like a deliberate insult carved into metal. "Jack, they really treated you this way?" I didn't answer. I simply tugged my sleeve down to hide the band, the instinctive gesture of a man who has learned over decades how to shrink himself to keep the peace. Marcus sighed, the kind of sigh that carries both anger for someone and sorrow for them at the same time. "Your son's wedding. And they sat you next to the ice machine." I managed a faint smile. "You know me. I don't want to make a scene." Marcus placed his palm flat on the metal surface. His hand didn't move, but the tension in it said everything. I always admired how much you could endure, Jack, he said quietly. But this isn't patience. This is disrespect. Before I could respond, a sharp clatter sounded beside us, forks and knives spilling across the floor. A young server had dropped an entire tray because he'd just realized who was sitting next to me. Sir, Mr. Hale. Are you Marcus Hale? His voice jumped a whole octave. A few nearby guests turned their heads, then a few more. Conversations slowed. A couple of VIPs stood up completely. The shift spread through the room like a silent snowfall, soft but heavy. I looked at Marcus. He smirked, just a small, knowing smirk, the kind of expression a man wears when he's spent a lifetime walking into rooms where one glance can change the air. That smirk unlocked something in my memory, a sudden flash of another winter, another time, another version of us. 2008, the worst financial crisis of our lifetime. Cold offices, colder stares, and careers hanging by threads thinner than ice. I was the compliance manager back then, and Marcus was a young analyst whose entire future could be destroyed by a single falsified report. Someone tried to pin a system failure on him. If that report had been submitted, he would have been suspended, blacklisted, most likely. I spent the whole night combing through numbers, hunting through audit logs, building the case that the error came from the system, not from him. I took responsibility so he could be cleared. I still remember him standing at my desk the next morning, eyes red, but voice steady. Jack, I owe you my entire career. I clapped his shoulder. I only did what was right. I'll repay you, no matter how long it takes. I forgot that promise. Marcus didn't, and now here we were 15 years later, surrounded by chandeliers and champagne flutes, with dozens of eyes watching him, and watching me. A staff member hurried over, nearly out of breath. Mr. Hale, sir, we're so sorry you shouldn't be seated here. Please, we'll take you to the VIP area immediately. Marcus turned toward him, slow and deliberate. And Mr. Porter's seat, he asked. The staff member swallowed hard. He's listed as overflow, sir. Mrs. Devon requested. Marcus stood up. The entire section froze. Every word you're saying, Marcus said, voice low and cutting, is confirming that Mr. Porter should not spend one more second sitting here. The young man blanched. Yes, sir, we'll fix it immediately. I reached out and touched Marcus's arm gently but firmly enough for him to feel it. Marcus, you don't have to do this. Actually, he said, eyes narrowing. I do. Respect is not something you beg for. It's something people owe you. I rose beside him. As we stepped out of the service area, I felt dozens of eyes shift toward us. Guests recognized Marcus first. Of course they did. But then they recognized me walking beside him. Whispers spread. Is that Marcus Hale? Isn't he? The advisor to the Northbridge Fund? Who's the man with him? Why was he sitting back there? Questions fell like small metallic drops, sharp, cold, echoing. No one had the answers, and their uncertainty created a strange, heavy silence that followed us through the hall. Then, from the bride's side of the room, I heard the unmistakable voice of Patricia Devon. Marcus! Hale. Her tone changed instantly from haughty to cautious, like someone seeing a storm forming right in front of her. She stopped mid-conversation, turning toward us. Her gaze flicked from Marcus to me, and in that fleeting moment, just one heartbeat long, I saw genuine shock in her eyes, because she couldn't understand how could the man she relegated to the back of the hall, the man she tried to erase, be walking beside one of the most powerful figures in Chicago finance. The air shifted. Heaviness settled into the room's ornate corners. Marcus leaned toward me and whispered, "You all right, Jack?" I gave a small smile. Better than when I was sitting next to the ice machine. Then it happened. The mini-climax. At the far end of the room, Connor turned. He saw me. He saw Marcus. He saw the entire crowd watching us with hushed confusion. And for the first time that entire evening, he didn't look away. He stood frozen-faced, draining of color, as if he'd just realized a storm he never expected had arrived. I murmured to Marcus, "Looks like this wedding is about to change." Marcus placed a steady hand on my back, guiding me forward. "Not just the wedding, Jack," he said. "This will change an entire family." We walked deeper into the grand hall. The chandelier above scattered shimmering light across the marble floor. The violins shifted to a slower, colder melody. And in that moment, something settled inside me, a truth I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. For the first time in a very long time, I wasn't stepping into someone else's story. They were about to step into mine. Marcus and I had only taken a few steps away from the service area when a middle-aged man in an expensive tuxedo walked toward us. He didn't look at my face. He looked straight at my wristband, the silver band. "Overflow guest. Hey you," he said, waving a dismissive hand. "Grab me a sparkling water, will you? Make it quick." I stood still. I didn't know whether it was anger or the numbness of a humiliation I'd grown too familiar with to even react. Marcus turned around slowly. The look in his eyes chilled the air. "What did you just say to him?" Marcus asked. The man chuckled, completely unaware of who he was talking to. "I said I need a drink." "The server here. He is the groom's father." Marcus said it one word at a time, like dropping metal weights onto stone. "And if you speak to him like that again, I'll have staff escort you out of this wedding. Permanently." The man's entire face drained of color. He stuttered out a few broken apologies before stumbling backward, almost knocking over a crystal display. I opened my mouth to calm things down, but Marcus was already facing me. "See that?" he murmured. "This isn't your fault. This is how people treat whatever they think is weak." I didn't answer. The pain wasn't from being mistaken for staff. It was from the fact that my own son stood less than 20 paces away, and he hadn't done a thing to stop it. Then I heard it, the sharp, rehearsed click of high heels on marble. Patricia Devon approached us like an artificial winter breeze, perfect makeup, perfect posture, perfect hair curled to a glossy, immaculate shape. "Marcus Hale," she said, smiling, the kind of social smile sharp enough to slice fruit. "We didn't know you'd be joining us. What a privilege for our family." Marcus shook her hand politely. "A wedding is a milestone, Patricia. I couldn't refuse the invitation." Then she turned to me, and the smile dropped almost instantly. "Oh, Mr. Porter," her voice sounded like she was trying to swallow a grain of sand stuck in her throat. "I hope my staff didn't inconvenience you." Marcus responded before I could. They didn't inconvenience him. They followed instructions, very clear instructions from someone. Patricia paused for half a second. A very small half-second, but enough for me to see annoyance flash in her eyes before she buried it under another practiced smile. "Marcus." She laughed softly. "You know how weddings are? Everything must look harmonious. Certain guests, older guests, or those unfamiliar with upscale environments can sometimes throw off the balance." I looked her straight in the eye. I wanted to see what kind of logic a woman like her used to justify putting the groom's father next to the kitchen. But she wouldn't look back at me, not even for a moment. "Well," she continued, turning back to Marcus, "I'm glad you're here. Let's catch up later." She touched Marcus's arm briefly, too familiar for someone who just insulted the father of the groom, then swept away, leaving behind a trail of cold Chanel No. 5. Marcus smirked. "She thinks I don't see the way she looks down on you." I sighed. "I'm used to it." "Well, I'm not." His voice dropped deep, steady, like warning thunder. That's when Connor walked up. The way he looked at me, not angry, not happy, just uneasy, told me he knew exactly what had happened. "Dad," Connor whispered, "please, don't make a big deal out of this. Not today." I went still. Marcus snapped his gaze toward him. "You think Jack is making a big deal?" he asked sharply. "Or are you trying to hide something?" Connor swallowed and looked away from Marcus, then back to me. "I just want everything to go smoothly. You understand, right? I wanted to say I sat next to an ice machine so things would go smoothly for you, but I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. The boy I raised with hands that cracked and bled from overwork to pay for his tuition for his home, for his chance at a life better than mine. "Smoothly," I repeated quietly. "So I'm supposed to stay silent." Connor lowered his eyes. I don't want tension, Dad. Not tension. Shame." He was ashamed of me. Then Lana appeared, white dress, perfect makeup, the kind of cold beauty that reminds you of Lake Michigan in winter. "Hi, Mr. Porter," she said with a tight smile. "I hope you understand. The family image is very important today. Everyone has their place." She paused, then added, "And some people fit the front row better than others." That wasn't a sentence. It was a blade wrapped in silk. Marcus stared at her the way a CFO stares at a spreadsheet full of fraudulent numbers. Did you just say the groom's father isn't front row material? Lana froze. That's not what I meant. But I knew. It was exactly what she meant. I nodded gently. I get it. Don't worry. I won't get near the photos. Lana exhaled in relief. She thought it was over. It wasn't. A soft voice spoke behind me. It wasn't your fault. I turned. Sarah, Lana's younger sister. The girl I used to take to Bulls games back when the Devon family wasn't quite so high society yet. She bit her lip and glanced around nervously before leaning closer. I saw the list. At first you were seated at the VIP table, right next to Connor. I froze. You're certain Sarah nodded. Then a few hours later, your name disappeared. I think someone changed it. I didn't need to ask who. The answer was written across every forced smile and every carefully measured glance tonight. Marcus looked at me. Then slowly he closed his hand into a fist, a silent vow. Jack, he said, it's time we find out who changed everything. The entire wedding hall seemed to tighten around us. The violins, the laughter, the clinking glasses, all of it faded into a strange, distant haze. For the first time that Christmas night, I didn't feel cold anymore. I felt something else, something clear, sharp, inevitable. This humiliation was not going to end quietly. The atmosphere inside the wedding hall had shifted into something strange, subtle tense, the kind of tension you don't notice until it's already wrapped around your throat. The violins were still playing from the corner of the room, but the melody no longer sounded like wedding music. It sounded like something warning of an approaching storm. Marcus looked at me, not with pity, but with calculation. He was the kind of man who, once he identified an injustice, would follow the trail until he found the hand that caused it. And he was no longer an observer. He had stepped into the story. Jack, he said quietly, we need to see the original seating chart. I frowned. What for? His voice lowered deep and final like a steel door closing, because I've seen this kind of game before. Marcus started walking, and I followed our footsteps echoing across the marble like knocks on destiny's door. The wedding coordinator saw him and stiffened immediately, standing straighter than she probably did during job interviews. Mr. Hale, she stammered. Is something wrong? Marcus didn't waste time. I want to see the original seating chart. She blinked rapidly. Which one, sir? The current version or the original? Marcus repeated. The file uploaded before the ceremony began. Her fake smile trembled at the edges. I'll check. She opened her iPad with both hands like she was holding something that might explode. A few seconds later, the screen lit up. Marcus motioned for me to step closer, and I saw it. Clear, blunt, undeniable. Table 2. Family section, seat 3. Jack Porter, father of groom, right next to Connor, right next to where a father should be. My hand tightened. Instinctively, I pulled my sleeve down to cover the humiliating silver wristband. Inside, I felt something twist, something like someone squeezing my insides with a cold hand. Marcus took one quick look at my face, then turned toward the coordinator. Who changed this? Her eyes dropped to the iPad as if she wished she could crawl into it. The edit was made at 3:17 p.m., about 10 minutes before the ceremony. Marcus narrowed his eyes. 10 minutes. Yes. Yes, sir. Good, he said. Now tell me who gave the order. Her entire body stiffened. Sir? If I say anything, I'll lose my job. I have 2 young kids. I put a hand on Marcus's arm. Don't push her. She's just doing what she was told. Marcus studied me, then looked back at her. Fine, he said slowly. I won't force you to name anyone. She exhaled sharply, relief releasing from her like a popped lock. But Marcus wasn't finished. But you will do one thing for me. She froze. You will restore Jack Porter to his original seat. Table 2, family section, right now. The coordinator's face drained of color. But the Devons? Marcus stepped closer, just one step, but enough to make her knees wobble. You want to keep your job, don't you? He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He simply asked a question, and that was enough. She nodded so fast her hair shook. "Yes, sir. I'll fix it right away." But the situation didn't end when she walked away. A group of VIP guests had caught a glimpse of the seating chart on her screen. Their expressions shifted instantly. Shock, curiosity, disgust. One man whispered, "You see that?" They stuck the groom's father in the staff area. A woman gasped, hands covering her mouth. "Oh my God. So the video wasn't fake?" "Video?" I turned to Marcus. He frowned. "Video? What video?" Before he could say more, a cascade of notification sounds erupted from the table to our left, phones buzzing, pinging, lighting up like a storm of alerts. A woman shrieked, "Oh my God, Jack Porter's video is going viral in the wedding group chat." People around us scrambled for their phones. I heard them. "Look at this," staff pushing him toward the back hallway. "He has the silver overflow wristband on." Someone said Mrs. Devon ordered it. "That's the groom's father." "This is insane." I stood frozen. Marcus turned to me, his expression heavy, not weak but empathetic in a way that stung. "Jack," he said, "you didn't do anything wrong. But the truth, people are starting to see it." At that moment, the coordinator rushed back breathless. "Mr. Porter, your seat has been moved. Table 2 is ready for you." Marcus crossed his arms. "Good." The coordinator bowed her head toward me, eyes shining with guilt. I'm so sorry for everything. I never thought it would turn into this." I put a hand on her shoulder. "I know you were following orders." She turned away quickly as if afraid Patricia would see her apologizing to me. Marcus motioned for me to walk with him toward the VIP section. As we crossed the room, I felt dozens of eyes following us, not with judgment now, but with the curiosity of people who've just witnessed the crack in a wealthy family's perfect facade. Some whispered, "Definitely Patricia's doing. She's obsessed with appearances. If this hits social media, they're done. Does the groom even know, or does the mother-in-law run everything?" These whispers clung to me like the cold wind off Lake Michigan. But this time they didn't cut into me. They carved space around me. But then a hand gripped my sleeve. I turned. Connor. His face was pale eyes darting between me and Marcus as if the floor was shifting under him. "Dad," he whispered, "please. Please don't escalate this. I'm begging you." That sentence, those words punched a hole in my chest. Marcus's head snapped toward him. "You think Jack is escalating?" he asked, voice sharp as a blade. "Or are you just trying to cover something up?" Connor swallowed, avoiding Marcus's stare, then looked at me. "Today is really important, Dad. I don't want my mother-in-law to feel uncomfortable." "You don't want her uncomfortable," Marcus cut in. "And what about your father?" Connor fell silent. And in that second, I understood something I'd been avoiding. My son was not standing with me. Not tonight. I said quietly, "I haven't done anything, Connor. I'm just standing where I'm supposed to stand." He bit his lip and stepped back, avoiding Marcus's eyes. We reached table 2, glistening crystal glasses, fresh flowers, candles, flickering like stars trapped in glass. But just as I was about to take my seat, another figure approached. Lana, the bride, her face strained in a polite smile as if the muscles were fighting each other. "Mr. Porter," she said sweetly, "I hope you understand. The family image is very important tonight. Many guests are partners of my parents, so please forgive any minor oversights." Her words were elegant, but each syllable felt like a needle pricking skin. Marcus smiled coldly. "This is Jack's seat. It will remain Jack's seat." Lana's face flushed. She nodded and stepped back, but not before shooting a sharp, icy glare toward the coordinator. Someone was going to get yelled at later. But everything shifted everything when Sarah Lana's younger sister slipped quietly toward me. She tugged my sleeve gently. "Mr. Porter, I can't stay quiet anymore." I looked at her, the same girl I used to take out for ice cream after Connor's basketball practices back when the Devons weren't dripping in money. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Sarah inhaled shakily. "I saw it. I saw your name being removed from the seating chart. I saw it with my own eyes. And the person who did it is from my family. And it wasn't Connor." I didn't move. Marcus turned slowly, listening. Someone from the bride's family, someone powerful, someone with a motive to remove me from the photos. Sarah looked around nervously, then whispered, "I think it was my mom." I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel shock. I felt understanding. Understanding of what this night truly was. Not a mistake, not an oversight, not a miscommunication, a decision, a deliberate erasure, a dirty game. Marcus's eyes followed mine across the hall to Patricia standing in the center of the room like she owned the air itself. I've known many wealthy people, Marcus said quietly, but very few are wealthy enough to afford losing their morality. He squeezed my shoulder. And I promise you, Jack, this won't end the way they expect. When I finally sat at the VIP table for the first time that Christmas night, I didn't feel cold anymore. I felt something else, something calm, steady, rising from deep within. Justice had opened its eyes, and it was staring straight at the Devon family. I sat at the VIP table for no more than 8 minutes. 8 minutes, just long enough to realize that no chair in that glittering room had ever truly been meant for me. Golden light reflected off crystal glasses. The Devons' laughter floated from the front of the hall as if nothing had happened. Everything was perfect. Except for my presence. My hand rested on the small wooden box holding the bracelet Connor and I made when he was a boy. I had brought it tonight to give him on the biggest day of his life. But in this moment, even lifting the lid felt impossible. I stood up. No one noticed. Not a single pair of eyes turned my way. Only Marcus watched me. I walked out of the grand hall through thick glass doors leading to the balcony where soft snow glittered under the outdoor lights. The cold air sliced across my face, sharp, merciless, yet somehow gentler than what I felt inside that room. I leaned on the railing and watched the snow fall thin as ash. Inside, the wedding hummed on. Outside, I stood alone. 1 minute, 2 minutes. I wondered if I had already stood there longer than the time Connor had spent looking at me all evening. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Not fast, not slow, just steady, like someone who knew exactly why they were coming. Marcus stepped beside me. He didn't speak at first. He simply stood there facing the fog-covered surface of Lake Forest, the two of us breathing out pale clouds into the winter air. Finally, he said, "Jack, you weren't wrong." I swallowed. "You don't have to say that." "I'm not saying it to comfort you," Marcus replied. "I'm saying it because it's the truth." I didn't look at him, but I could feel his gaze. The gaze of a man who had once been humiliated in a place where he expected respect. A man who had lived long enough to understand the cost of silence. He continued, "You raised that boy on your own. Years in that tiny Evanston house juggling 3 jobs so he could get a proper education." Marcus paused, voice low and heavy. "And tonight, they treated you like you were nothing." The wind slapped across my cheek, but it didn't hurt as much as those words. I exhaled. "It's his night. I don't want to ruin it." Marcus shook his head. "His night doesn't give anyone the right to walk over you." Silence stretched between us, the silence of 2 older men who had seen enough life to know there is nothing cheap about dignity, no empty comfort, no false kindness, just presence, true presence. Then the glass doors behind us swung open. Connor stepped out. His suit was crisp and new, but his face looked anything but confident. "Dad, what are you doing out here?" His voice was soft, too soft, with that trembling edge people get when they know something is badly wrong. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to see the mixture of guilt and embarrassment on his face. "Just needed some air," I said. Connor swallowed hard and moved closer, the warm lights of the hall illuminating his uneasy expression. "Dad, I know things got a little awkward in there, but don't misunderstand. Marcus turned his head sharply. He wasn't angry. He was disappointed. Deeply. "You didn't protect your father," Marcus said. Connor stepped back as if the words hit him physically. I never said I agreed with what they did. It's just that you stayed quiet," Marcus said calmly. "And silence can be more shameful than any decision your mother-in-law ever made." Connor's mouth opened, but no words came out. Marcus continued. "What do you think Jack wanted? Just one thing: to stand beside his son on his wedding day. That's all." My grip tightened on the railing. My fingers trembled. "Marcus," I murmured enough. "No," he said, his voice turning into tempered steel. "I won't stand by and watch this. I've seen too many fathers disrespected by their own children." Connor stared at the snow at his feet, dragging his shoe through it. "I don't want you to be upset, Dad," he whispered. "I'm not upset," I said. I paused long enough for him to look up at me. I'm humiliated. Marcus didn't break eye contact with Connor. But the next words he spoke were for me. Jack, let's go. I looked one last time through the glass doors at the glowing wedding, the sparkling decorations, the perfectly curated evening where I belonged nowhere. And suddenly I felt older, not by years, by decades. Connor opened his mouth again, but I lifted a hand. That's enough, Connor. I'm leaving. I didn't say goodbye, didn't shake hands, didn't congratulate anyone. I didn't look back. I just walked slow, heavy steps, but with my back straight. Marcus walked beside me, his shoulder close to mine, as if he knew I could collapse under the weight of it all. I heard snow crunch beneath our shoes, heard the wind weaving through the pine trees, heard the wedding fading behind us like a dream, dissolving into nothing. At the parking lot, Marcus opened the door of his SUV. Jack, he said softly, this isn't the end. It's only the beginning. I placed the wooden box on the seat and climbed in. My hand stayed on top of it. The gift I didn't get to give. I thought I was strong. I thought I was used to loneliness. But that night on Christmas at my own son's wedding, I learned something I had never admitted out loud. Some wounds don't age with you. They don't soften. They don't dull. They just grow quieter, deeper, sharper, like a blade buried beneath the snow. 3 days after Connor's wedding, Chicago was still covered in snow, but the excitement of Christmas had faded. What remained were cold gray streets and holiday lights that already looked tired in the winter wind. And me, I still hadn't touched the small wooden box sitting on my living room table. I sat alone in my old Evanston house, listening to the steady hum of the heater, trying and failing to warm a space that felt hollow beyond repair. The night of Connor's wedding, I didn't cry. But on the morning of December 27th, when I woke up, I couldn't get out of bed right away. Not because of age, but because something inside me had cracked something I had kept held together with silence for years. I made coffee. The old machine let out a long, painful groan like the last breath of someone who had carried too much weight for too long. The smell of fresh coffee filled the small kitchen, a smell that used to mean mornings with Mary and Connor before cancer took her away and before Connor drifted into another world entirely. Now it was just me. I sat down, lifted the mug, and before the first sip reached my lips, my phone buzzed. Not a holiday greeting, not a message from my son, but a text from a former colleague in the finance world. Jack, you need to see this. Attached was a video. My heart skipped. It was the video of me being escorted to the service area at the wedding, the silver wristband, my confused expression, and the voice of a staff member saying Mrs. Devon doesn't want him near the photo area. But the video wasn't on TikTok, it wasn't on Facebook, it was spreading inside private group chats, bankers, compliance officers, hedge fund analysts, the same circles where I had spent my entire career building a reputation of integrity, and now they were seeing this. Another message came in, tell me this isn't real. Is that really you, Jack? Then another, what happened? They treated you like a back-of-house employee. My grip tightened on the phone until my knuckles turned white. I had thought I could bury that humiliation in the dark, but someone had shined a spotlight into that darkness. Near noon, I heard a knock on my door, slow, firm, the knock of someone who knew I might hesitate to answer. I forced myself up, walked to the door, and unlocked it. Marcus stood there, black trench coat, snow on his shoulders, breath mixing with the cold air behind him. Jack, he said without any preamble, let me in. I stepped aside. Marcus brushed snow off his coat and placed his leather portfolio on the table the way someone places evidence before a hearing. I saw the video, he said. Not just one. A lot of people have. I rubbed my forehead. Marcus, I don't want this spreading further. Spreading Marcus let out a quiet, humorless laugh. Jack, people across 3 major banks are discussing it right now. They're asking, how could they shove the groom's father behind the kitchen? I didn't respond. Marcus sat down, leaning forward. Jack, this isn't about a seat anymore. This is about dignity, about someone intentionally trying to diminish you. I sat across from him. How can you be sure it was intentional? Marcus opened his portfolio, pulled out the printed original seating chart. Because I found this, he said. And because Sarah sent me something you need to see. I straightened. Sarah. Marcus nodded. The same girl you drove to that Bulls game years ago. He handed me his iPad with a PDF open. I tapped it. It was the original invitation email. Sent to me. The line was clear, undeniable. Assigned seating table 2, groom's family, VIP section. I set the iPad down as if it weighed 100 pounds. Marcus crossed his arms. No one makes a mistake like that, Jack. Original says VIP, final version says overflow guest. I let out a long breath that carried decades of tiredness. So it means someone changed it. Marcus didn't hesitate. Not just someone. Someone with the power to override seating minutes before the ceremony. There are only 2 names on that access list. My heart thudded. Patricia or Lana, Marcus said. No one else had the authority. A sting spread in my chest, not anger, but the deep ache of being intentionally erased. I whispered, but why? Marcus looked at me for a long moment. Because you don't fit their image. Because you're not wealthy like they are. Because you don't make a good accessory in their staged wedding photos. Because they knew you wouldn't fight back. I let out a dry, bitter breath that was supposed to be a laugh. What do you think I should do? Marcus stood closing his portfolio. First, he said, you need to accept that this wasn't an accident. I said nothing. Second, he continued, you need to know that I'm on your side. His eyes met mine, the steady gaze of a man who never forgot the person who saved his career in 2008. Jack, I won't let them treat you like this. Not again. I stayed silent. In my mind, the entire Christmas night replayed the phrase, overflow guest, the Devon family laughing, Connor avoiding my eyes, Patricia's cold voice sharper than the Lake Michigan wind. And then something else appeared, the truth I had refused to admit. If Marcus hadn't shown up that night, I would have been erased from the most important moment of my son's life, and nobody would have known. No, not nobody. Nobody would have cared. Before Marcus left, he turned back. Jack, he said, answer me one thing. I looked up. If I find out who changed your seat, Marcus asked, voice low, do you want me to bring the truth to light? I almost answered immediately, but my throat tightened. I looked at the wooden box on the table, the gift I never got to give. I looked at the family photo on the shelf, me, Mary, and little Connor, in a time when life still felt simple. I closed my eyes. And for the first time since Christmas night, I spoke the truth I had been avoiding Marcus. I want to know. He nodded. Good. Because the truth is already on its way up. Then Marcus stepped out into the cold, leaving me alone in the quiet room. I placed my hand on the wooden box, and I realized something. This wasn't about a wedding, or a seat, or a misplaced wristband. This was about dignity, about family, about a father being erased with a single tap on a screen. And for the first time in years, I felt something warm ignite in my chest, a small flame I once believed had died. I stepped into 2025 with a feeling I'd never quite known before. It wasn't sadness, and it wasn't anger. It was silence, the kind of silence people hear right before thunder breaks open the sky. The first days of January were colder than anything December had offered. The Chicago wind cut straight through skin, and snow sat heavy on the steps in front of my house. I stood in the kitchen making a cup of hot coffee, my hands still unsteady. The night of Connor's wedding clung to me like frost that refused to melt. But strangely, the thing that weighed on me most was not the humiliation of being removed from the VIP section. It was Connor's silence. No call, no message, no explanation. On the morning of January 3rd, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize, but I knew the voice instantly. Jack, it's me, Marcus. I sat down. What did you find? Marcus inhaled a long, heavy breath, the kind a man takes before closing a steel vault door. We have a problem. My brow tightened. What kind of problem? Marcus didn't ease into it. Patricia is denying everything. She claims the seating chart glitched. She's blaming the coordinator for the entire mess. A heaviness settled in my chest. I figured they'd try that. Jack, Marcus said slowly. Patricia didn't just deny it. She threatened the coordinator, told her if she made up stories, she'd never work another wedding in Chicago. My jaw clenched. That sounds like her. Yes, Marcus replied. But luckily, Patricia isn't the only one with access to those systems. I looked up. What do you mean? Marcus lowered his voice as if someone else could possibly hear us. I spoke with the tech team hired to set up the iPad system. They have access logs. I stood up straight, heart pounding harder. Marcus continued. The seating chart was changed from an iPad account at exactly 3:17 p.m., 10 minutes before the ceremony. My voice dropped. Who was logged in? There was a brief silence, a silence heavy enough to crack ice. Jack Marcus said the account belonged to Lana. I didn't respond. Not because I doubted him, but because a part of me had already suspected it. A memory flashed through my mind, Lana in her perfect white wedding gown, smiling like she belonged in a magazine, only for it to be replaced with another image. Her looking at me and saying, "Please understand, Mr. Porter, family image matters." I swallowed hard. You're certain Marcus didn't hesitate? I have the device log, the timestamp, the MAC address. There's no mistake. I sat back down, the strength leaving my legs. Why would she do that? My voice was barely a whisper. Marcus answered plainly. Because Lana was the only one who benefited. She and Patricia wanted you away from the front row, far from the pictures, far from the guests. If you sat beside Connor, people would ask about his real family, his real background. They didn't want that narrative. His words chilled me more than the January wind blowing outside. That night my phone rang again. Connor. I stared at his name on the screen for nearly 20 seconds before answering. Dad, do you have a minute? His voice was small, like a man afraid of being overheard. I do. I want to explain. You should have done that on the 26th, I replied, not unkindly but tired down to the bone. Connor exhaled shakily. Dad, everything got out of control. People are talking. My friends saw the video. I'm stuck. Stuck between your wife, your mother-in-law, and your father. I said, the bitterness, quiet, but sharp. You don't need to say it. I understand. Connor stayed silent for a long moment. Dad, I swear I never wanted any of that to happen. But you didn't stop it, I said. There was no argument on the other end, just silence. Then I heard Lana calling him in the background, her tone clipped, irritated. Connor rushed his words. Dad, another time. I'll call back. The line went dead. I set the phone down and leaned back in my chair. Sometimes a father knows he has lost his son long before anyone says the words out loud. The next morning, Marcus came by again. He walked in with a snow-covered coat and a knit hat, his cheeks red from the wind. Jackie said, I need to tell you something. I poured 2 cups of coffee. Sit down and say it. Marcus placed a stack of papers on the table. I've been reviewing the lease agreement for the Devon Realty building my fund was planning to sign. I lifted my eyes to him. He continued. Before the wedding, I was ready to approve it. Good terms, good location, strong asset class. He paused. But on December 25th, I decided everything needed to be reevaluated. I understood immediately. Because of me. Because of ethics. Marcus corrected. I don't do business with people who treat their own family that way. Devon Realty may own real estate, but they don't own integrity. I gave a faint, tired smile. Marcus, you don't have to fight for me. He folded his arms and looked at me with a seriousness that filled the entire room. Jack, I'm not fighting for you. I'm fighting for what's right. He leaned forward, voice low and firm. You are a man worthy of respect. If anyone tries to walk over you, they will answer to me. The room felt smaller with his words inside it. I shook my head. This is between me and Connor's family. No, Marcus said, tone granite solid. When they shoved you behind the kitchen, it stopped being a family matter. They turned it into a question of human dignity. And I won't stay quiet about that. I turned toward the window. Snow was still falling, white, soft, peaceful, but so bitterly cold. Marcus, I just don't want to lose anything else. He answered gently, Jack, you've already lost enough. His words struck a place inside me I had avoided for years, a place hidden, quiet, full of scars. Later that afternoon, I received a text from Sarah. Mr. Jack. I found more. I called her immediately. She spoke quickly, angry, apologetic, hurt. Mr. Jack, I went through the wedding team's internal emails. I saw your original invitation. You really were assigned to the VIP family section. I closed my eyes. Sarah continued. And I found another email from Lana's iPad account. The timestamp matches exactly when the seating chart changed. My hand tightened into a fist. Sarah's voice broke a little. I'm so sorry. I never imagined my mom and sister would do something like this. But there's no one else. I thanked her, my voice nearly gone. After the call, I stood at the window watching snow settle over the yard. Each snowflake seemed to land with a quiet truth: I hadn't been overlooked. I hadn't been forgotten. I hadn't been misplaced. I had been removed. On purpose, with intent, by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. And I didn't need anyone to say the name out loud anymore. On the night of December 30th, Marcus sent me one final message: Jack, you're not fighting this alone. I stared at the text for a long time, and for the first time since the wedding night, I didn't feel like a man standing alone in the snow anymore. February 2025 in Chicago was unlike any February I'd lived through. The days felt shorter. The air felt heavier, as if it held every sound hostage in a thick, unmoving silence. I spent my days quietly in the old Evanston house, far from crowds, far from whispers, far from the private finance circles where the wedding video, the one that never went viral publicly yet spread like wildfire among bankers, regulators, and investment managers, had already carved its mark. In those circles, a man's dignity sometimes weighed more than his bank account. I tried to keep my life simple: wake early, make coffee, clean the garage, sometimes climb up to the attic and open the boxes Mary had left behind. Old photos, Connor's childhood drawings, bits of a life that once felt warm. But no matter how much I avoided thinking about the wedding night, it clung to me like the cold seeping through the old window frames. And then, in the middle of a gray February morning, silence broke. Around 10 a.m., I heard a car pull up outside. A black luxury SUV, tinted windows, expensive plates. I knew instantly it wasn't Marcus. He drove a sedan, never anything flashy. A woman stepped out. Patricia Devon. She walked up my snow-covered path with the confidence of someone entering her own boardroom, not another man's home. Cream fox fur coat, white heels, hair curled perfectly. A cloud of cold, high-end perfume followed her. I opened the door before she could knock. "Mr. Porter," she said, lips forming a sharp, elegant smile. "We need to talk." I stepped aside, not welcoming her, but not refusing her. She walked into my home like she was stepping into a fitting room at a high-end boutique on Michigan Avenue. Her eyes scanned everything: the old walls, the worn furniture, the outdated fixtures. It wasn't disgust. It was condescension, the look of someone who had lived too long in luxury to recognize authenticity. I asked, "What do you want?" Patricia didn't answer right away. She opened her leather bag, pulled out a thick white envelope, and placed it on my table. "We don't need to make this a big deal," she said. "My family has more to lose than you realize." I looked at the envelope, didn't touch it. Patricia nudged it closer. Her voice softened, but underneath it was steel. $75,000. Enough for you to be satisfied and silent. I stared at her for a long moment, then asked, silent, about what Patricia gave the smallest laugh, a soft, patronizing exhale. "Oh, Jack, we're both adults. You know your video is circulating in investment groups. If it continues, it could lead to unnecessary speculation." She leaned in slightly. The groom's father pushed out of the VIP section. "People will ask questions. The media might sniff around. My family does not want that." Her tone shifted, smooth, controlled. "You simply accept this check, and we forget everything." I still hadn't opened the envelope. "You think I asked quietly that I'm silent because of $75,000? Patricia shrugged gently. "I know you're not a wealthy man, and this would certainly help." The insult was subtle, elegant, deadly. I opened the envelope. The check inside gleamed under the morning light. $75,000. Pay to the order of Jack Porter. I looked at it for 3 seconds. Then I tore it, slowly. Each rip was soft but unmistakable, like slicing through the mask Patricia wore. She shot up from her chair. "A $75,000 check, you dare? I'm not a piece of furniture at my son's wedding," I said, voice low, steady. "You don't buy my silence." Patricia's eyes sharpened, anger rising despite her attempt at poise. "You don't understand," she said, finally dropping the polished tone. "You have no idea how powerful my family is." I answered without hesitation. "I know exactly how powerful they are. That's why I can't bow to you." She narrowed her eyes. "You're walking into a dead end, Jack." I shook my head. You put me there on Christmas night." She stared at me, evaluating, calculating, as if trying to decide whether I was a threat or simply foolish. Then she turned her heels, striking my old hardwood floor like nails. At the door, she spoke without looking back. "You'll regret tearing that check, I guarantee it." She slammed the SUV door so hard it shook slightly. I watched her go, not with anger but with clarity. She hadn't come to resolve anything, she came to intimidate me. But what she didn't understand was simple. I had lived my whole life in silence, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. That afternoon, Marcus called. "Jack," he said, "Patricia visited you, didn't she?" I exhaled slowly. "You knew I predicted it." He didn't sound surprised or alarmed, just tired, the kind of tired a man gets after seeing too many people abuse their influence. "I've arranged a meeting for you," Marcus continued. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Attorney Nora Patel, River North." "Nora Patel," I repeated. "That name sounds familiar. You met her once. Banking Conference 2015. She specializes in ethics, civil litigation, and cases involving personal rights violations." I sat down, rubbing my forehead. "Marcus, I'm not ready to sue anyone, I know," he said. "This meeting isn't about suing. It's about you understanding what rights you have." He paused, letting the words settle. "Jack, what happened to you being removed from your rightful place, being labeled overflow, being publicly displaced? It isn't just humiliating. It may be a legal issue." I didn't speak for a long moment. "Marcus, I'm not used to this. I don't want you fighting my battles." He was silent for a breath. "Then, Jack, you fought alone your entire life. But this time, this is not a battle you need to fight on your own." Outside, I heard the wind shift, cold, sharp, full of warning. Marcus added softly, "Meet with Nora. If you choose to walk away afterward, I'll respect that. But at least, don't give them another chance to step on you." After he hung up, I sat alone in the quiet house. The torn pieces of the check still lay on the floor. For the first time in years, I didn't feel weak. I felt something else entirely. I felt myself standing up. By late March, the Chicago sky hung low and gray, like someone had draped a heavy cloth over the entire city. I arrived at the Hale Partners office on a late afternoon, the kind where the wind off the river rattles the windows and the glass towers in River North look more like frozen cliffs than buildings. I had never stepped foot inside a place like this. No noise, no chaos, no unnecessary luxury, just the silence of big decisions and the metallic scent of numbers that could either build an empire or bury one. Marcus met me at the entrance of the conference room. Same charcoal gray suit, same simple tie, but something in his eyes told me that today, I was about to hear things I was never meant to hear. "Jack," he said quietly, "come with me." There were no assistants in the room, no lawyers, no secretaries, just Marcus and me. He set a thick binder in front of me, held together by a black metal clasp. "This is Devon Realty." I opened it. The first pages were financial reports. Accumulated debt $38.4 million. Negative cash flow since Q2 of 2023. 2 commercial buildings collateralized. 3 halted development projects. I looked up. "Marcus, I don't know real estate, but even I can see." "They're sinking," Marcus said flatly, "deeper than anyone realizes." I flipped to the next section. Internal memos, quality control notes, legal department reports. Several lines were highlighted in red. A file was tabbed on the side, behavioral notes, external relations. I pulled it out. A long list, longer than it had any right to be. Complaints of class discrimination by the Devon family, refusing partnerships with clients who don't fit the brand image, requesting seating changes at fundraisers because an elderly guest looked too common, instructing staff to keep unfitting individuals out of media photos. I read each line slowly, every sentence cut deeper. These weren't isolated incidents, they were patterns. Marcus didn't speak. He let me arrive at the truth on my own. I whispered what they did to me was just coincidence. Marcus shook his head. "No, Jack. This is their culture. What happened at Connor's wedding, you were just one more thing they wanted to hide." My throat tightened. Marcus pushed another folder toward me. "Look at this." Inside was an email chain between the wedding planner and Patricia's assistant. Subject line, seating revision. Final. And in the middle of the email, plain as day, Mrs. Devon wants to confirm do not seat the groom's father in the front row. No bold text, no exclamation marks, just a clean administrative instruction. I set the pages down. My hands trembled. Not with anger, but with the weight of seeing, maybe for the first time, that I was not the victim of a mistake. I was the target of a decision. Marcus spoke softly. Jack, they didn't just disrespect you. They're manipulating Connor. That's the part that makes me sick. I looked up. Manipulating him? Marcus nodded. Patricia wants to turn Connor into their son, not yours. I went still. Jack, Marcus continued. They know Connor fears not being enough for them. They use that fear to control him, to cut him off from you, to make him believe his value comes from them. A cold shiver went through me. His silence at the wedding, Marcus said, wasn't apathy. It was pressure. Pressure from a whole dynasty standing behind him. I closed my eyes. All those years, working late shifts, juggling bills, standing at school pickup lines, building a life for him without Mary. All of it led to the moment he turned away from me on his wedding day. And now I finally knew why. My phone buzzed. Connor. I looked at Marcus. He nodded. Answer. I picked up. Dad. His voice was shaking, not from cold, from something heavier. Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't respond. I saw some emails. His breath caught. I didn't know what my mother-in-law and Lana did. I swear to you, Dad, I didn't know. His voice cracked. My son, the one I thought had outgrown every weakness, sounded like a frightened boy again. Connor, I said quietly, I know. God, Dad, I never wanted that to happen. I would never treat you like that. I swear I didn't know. I could hear him trying not to break, fighting tears, fighting shame. Dad, he whispered, I let you down. I closed my eyes. No, I thought. You didn't let me down. You let yourself down. But I didn't say it. Instead, I said, Connor, there's more you don't know. And you need to prepare yourself. For what. I looked at Marcus. His eyes said everything. It's time. I said, for the consequences of what others have done in your name. Connor didn't speak. He only breathed heavy, shaky, broken. I ended the call. Marcus looked at me, no anger, no coldness, only the steady resolve of someone who had chosen a side. Jack, he said from now on, we go all the way. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone, not even a little. By mid-May, Chicago finally began to warm again. The sunlight wasn't cold anymore, but the air inside me hadn't thawed one bit. That afternoon, Marcus picked me up in his familiar sedan. Jack, he said as I settled into the seat today, everything changes. I didn't answer. I only looked out toward Lake Michigan. The water tinted a pale summer blue that felt nothing like the winter still stuck in my chest. These past months, I had grown used to silence, the kind that still carries the echo of a Christmas night spent outside my own son's wedding. But today, the silence smelled different. It smelled like something ending or beginning. The Chicago Children's Fund Gala was held at the Grandwood Pavilion, a hall with ceilings so high they seemed to hold the sky in place, and chandeliers so large the crystal looked like frozen waterfalls. Devon Realty's logo hung at the center of the stage, huge, bold, impossible to ignore. Marcus walked beside me through the lobby, not avoiding anyone, not hiding anything. People stared as we passed, first at him, then at me, the way searchlights skim over a dark field looking for whatever story they weren't told. They think today is about signing a lease, Marcus murmured. They don't realize. Today, we set the terms. I nodded. Inside the VIP room, the Devon family was already seated. Richard Devon, stiff and irritated. Patricia, jewelry glittering like sharpened ice. Lana, unable to meet my eyes. Marcus sat, placed his briefcase on the table, and spoke with a calmness that made the entire room tighten like a drawn bow. Before we finalize the lease for Devon Realty's new headquarters, I have two conditions. Richard's brow furrowed. There are no last-minute conditions, he snapped. We already agreed. We didn't agree on anything, Marcus said quietly. Not yet. The way Richard's jaw tightened told me he understood this was not a negotiation he would win. Marcus slid 2 documents across the table. Condition 1. The Devon family will publicly apologize to Jack Porter at today's fundraiser press announcement. Condition 2. Devon Realty will fund the Harold Porter Scholarship for underprivileged students pursuing finance and economics for a minimum of 10 years. My breath caught when I saw her name, Mary, my wife, gone a decade but suddenly present in a way that cut straight through me. Richard read the conditions and a vein pulsed in his forehead. "Are you extorting me?" he demanded. Marcus gave a thin, controlled smile. "If I wanted to extort you, Richard, I would have done it in a way you're familiar with. This is not extortion. This is restoring ethics to a company that is collapsing because it lacks them." Patricia inhaled sharply, as if about to leap to her feet, but Marcus's gaze froze her in place. "Marcus." Richard tried again. "We've supported this charity for years, and that charity work doesn't erase the fact that you pushed the groom's father out of his own son's wedding." Silence. Heavy. Undeniable. Like the moment before the judge reads a verdict. Lana's eyes welled, her hands trembling. Richard looked at her, then back at Marcus, and suddenly the facade cracked. "My company is struggling," he said softly. "With our current debt, we can't afford to lose this lease." "I reluctantly agree." Patricia spun toward him. "Richard, you can't be serious." He raised a hand, shaking but firm. "We have no choice." Marcus stood. "The apology will be made on stage. The press is waiting." I exhaled slowly. Not joy, not triumph, just alignment. Like something finally being put back where it always belonged. As we walked toward the stage, the entire hall quieted. Richard stepped up to the microphone. His voice wavered, but he forced it steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, today, the Devon family and Devon Realty have an important announcement." Hundreds of eyes turned toward me. Richard continued. "At our son's wedding on December 25th, a serious mistake was made regarding the seating of Mr. Jack Porter, the groom's father. We accept full responsibility." Patricia stood beside him, cheeks lifted in a smile that didn't reach her eyes, a smile stretched tight like something painful beneath it. Then Lana stepped forward. For the first time since I had met her, she didn't look polished or sharp. She looked frightened. Her voice cracked instantly. "Mr. Porter, I was wrong. I cared too much about the image of my family and forgot the person who deserved the most respect. You." The room rippled with murmurs. Lana wiped tears. Real or not, I let them fall without offering comfort or criticism. Then Richard spoke again. "Devon, Realty commits to funding the Harold Porter Scholarship for 10 years. This is our honor and our responsibility." Mary's name echoed through the hall, and for the first time in months my shoulders felt a little lighter, but the hardest moment hadn't arrived yet. Connor stepped onto the stage. No one called him. He came on his own shirt, wrinkled eyes red, breathing like a man carrying months of guilt. "Dad," he said, voice raw. "For months, I've stayed silent to avoid conflict, to protect the image of my wife and her family." He swallowed hard, "But by staying silent, I pushed you to the last row." His apology wasn't poetic, it wasn't rehearsed. It was the voice of a boy who finally understood the weight of his choices. "Dad, they treated you terribly because I didn't stop them. Because I was a coward." A wave of whispers rippled across the hall. Connor looked down at me, tears threatening. "I'm sorry, Dad, truly. I didn't go on stage. I didn't hug him. I didn't break down. I only stood there and let my words fall with the weight they deserved. Respect, Connor, is something you protect, not something you beg others to give you." He lowered his head. No excuses, no protest. He knew I was right. The hall fell quiet, not the hush of confusion, but the hush of understanding. A lesson settling. A truth landing. The event ended. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered. Donors murmured. Marcus turned to me with the smallest nod. "Jack," he said today, "you stood exactly where you should have been. For the first time since Christmas night, I felt I wasn't standing outside the room anymore. And in the noise of the hall, amid footsteps, applause, and cameras, I heard something clear and steady. Justice never comes fast. But it comes when you stand upright and wait for it." Autumn came late to Evanston in 2025. The leaves fell sparsely, drifting in thin, tired spirals. and the wind carried the damp cold off Lake Michigan, the kind of cold that teaches you how to warm yourself from the inside out. I didn't expect to enter this season like this calm, not angry, not feeling like the world had shoved me outside the door. Because starting in September, Connor came back, not with polite apologies, not with hesitant texts, but with presence, a kind of presence I had stopped expecting from my son. September 5th. I was sweeping leaves off the front porch when he arrived. No warning. No pretense. He stood at the walkway, hands shoved into his hoodie pockets, eyes on the ground, not like a 33-year-old married man, but like a 17-year-old caught doing something he knew was wrong. "Dad," he whispered, "can I come in?" I nodded. He sat in Mary's old chair, the one she loved. His hands trembled, and then, as if he had held everything in too long, he spoke all at once, voice breaking. "Dad, I have to tell you everything. If I don't, I won't be able to live with myself." I sat across from him. I didn't question him. I didn't push. I simply listened. The prenup. The wedding wasn't just Mom Devon's fault, Connor said, eyes wet. I played a part. He pulled a worn folder from his backpack. "You know about the prenup, right?" I nodded. He had brushed it off the year before, calling it nothing serious. Now I knew that was a lie or a shield. He opened the folder. It says, "If we divorced, I only get 5% of the marital assets. All my savings before marriage have to be joint, and I only control 30% of my paycheck." My chest tightened. "And there's more," he said. "Lana controls the email. She has access to the shared inbox. She deleted almost 40 voicemails from you this year." I closed my eyes. Every call I waited for, every message I thought Connor forgot, every silence that cut deeper than the last, all of it deleted by someone who didn't want me to exist in my own son's life. "I messed up, Dad," Connor whispered. "I saw your emails, but I didn't know they were deleted. I thought you didn't want to see me. I thought you'd given up on me." I didn't reply right away, because sometimes a father only has two choices in a moment like that: stay silent or break. I chose silence. Connor covered his face with both hands. "I know I was weak," he said. "I know I stood on the wrong side. But I can't do it anymore. I lost you on my wedding day, and I almost lost myself." I looked at him for a long time, and in those tired eyes I didn't see the arrogance the Devon family encouraged. I saw the boy who used to cling to my hand at basketball games asking Dad, "Did I do okay?" I spoke softly. "Connor, you were wrong, but you haven't lost everything, not with me." He broke down crying. For the first time since 2018, my son cried in my house. The weeks that followed, he began coming more often, some afternoons after work, some mornings after a run, sometimes just to leave a hot coffee on my table and say, "Dad, I'm trying." But the Devon family didn't stay quiet. Richard summoned him to the office repeatedly. Patricia sent emails pages long accusing him of betraying the family. And Lana, there were nights he slept on my couch, eyes swollen, whispering, "Dad, I don't know where this marriage is going. I didn't interfere." I only said, "Find yourself before you decide who to keep or who to lose." Mid-October, Sarah came over with a bag of homemade apple pies, Mary's favorite. "Uncle Jack," she said while pouring tea, "I need to tell you something." I looked up. "You're kind," she said, "but sometimes you're so kind that people think you're weak." I smiled faintly. "You think I'm weak?" "No," she said firmly, "but people take advantage of your kindness, and you deserve a new life, a new place. Somewhere you're not treated like a shadow." Then she added, "You should accept Marcus's offer. Hale Partners needs someone like you, and you deserve at this stage of your life to do something that aligns with who you really are." She was 27, yet somehow understood me better than I understood myself. I thanked her with a nod that meant more than words. November 2nd. Marcus came to the house, unannounced, coat zipped to his throat, breath fogging in the cold. "Jack," he said at the door, "there's something I want to give you." He sat down, opened his briefcase, and slid a navy blue folder toward me, stamped with the Hale Partners seal. I spoke with the board, Marcus said. They agreed to my proposal. I opened the folder. Inside was a contract senior advisor, ethics and risk governance, Hale Partners. I read each line slowly. It wasn't a desk job, it wasn't a burden. It was a role built on integrity, the one thing Marcus always said I had in abundance. Jack, he said gently, you've lived through what many executives need to learn: humiliation, manipulation, and what people do with power when they think no one will push back. I set the contract down. Marcus's voice lowered, steady as stone. Hale Partners needs someone who understands the weight of dignity. They need you. I exhaled long and heavy, but not weary. For the first time in a year, I felt like I was setting down a backpack I'd been carrying since Christmas night. Marcus, I whispered, I never thought I deserved something like this. Marcus smiled, small, rare, sincere. Jack, you fought your entire life for your family. You stood alone against an entire dynasty, and you didn't break. If someone like you doesn't deserve this, then who does? I looked at the contract. At my name printed clearly across the top, Jack Porter. And for the first time in many years, I wasn't ashamed to look at it. I nodded. All right, I'll take it. Marcus grinned softly. Welcome aboard, Jack. A gust of wind outside swept the last gold leaves off the porch. I looked out the window and finally understood the truth I had been too afraid to face all year. I spent my whole life accepting less than what I deserved. But not today, not anymore. The first snow of the season fell over Evanston on the morning of November 15th, 2025. The flakes were so light I couldn't hear them land on the porch roof, but I could feel the peace they carried. I sat in my small apartment, a cup of hot coffee steaming on the table. Nothing here was luxurious. The walls were old, the furniture older, but when the morning light hit the framed photos of Mary and little Connor, this place felt warmer than any mansion I'd stepped into over the last year. I'd walked a long road to reach this moment, longer than the distance between the service hallway at last Christmas's wedding and this very chair beneath me now. And today, that road finally came to an end. Around noon, Connor arrived. He didn't look shaky the way he did earlier this year. He knocked gently. I opened the door. Dad, he said, tonight, I want you to come to my home. I blinked, surprised. Is something wrong? Connor shook his head. Not something. Someone. He lowered his gaze and added softly, I want you to sit at the center of the table tonight, not in the kitchen corner, not in the overflow row, but where you belong. I looked at him and there was nothing doubtful in his eyes this time. Some apologies are spoken just to calm the storm. This wasn't one of them. This was an apology that took almost a year to ripen. I nodded. I'll come. Connor exhaled, as if he had finally set down a weight he'd been carrying for months. His new home. Connor's place was small, warm, and nothing like the polished luxury the Devon family had wrapped around him. He must have moved out after the months of turmoil. In the dining room at the center of the table was a single chair with a clean new cloth folded neatly over it. Dad, Connor said, this seat is for you. I sat. I didn't speak. But my hands trembled, not from age, but from happiness I hadn't felt in years. Lana stepped out from the kitchen. Gone was the glamorous, polished woman from the Devon banquets. No jewelry, no makeup, a gray sweater, jeans. Just a woman facing her own mistakes, Mr. Porter. Lana said softly, I would like to speak with you. Connor stepped back, giving us space. Lana drew in a shaky breath. I hurt you, she said, not because you were wrong, but because I wanted to hide my own insecurities. I'm sorry. I looked at her, not angry, not vengeful, just present. She continued, I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I'm only asking for a chance to prove I can do better. I nodded slowly. Lana, forgiveness isn't a gift, I said. It's a journey. And journeys begin with actions, not words. She bowed her head. I understand. It was the first time I had ever seen her grow slowly but genuinely. The simple dinner. That evening we shared a modest meal, beef stew salad and a small apple pie. Nothing like the Devon family's grand banquets. But it was the most honest dinner Connor and I had shared in years. We talked, we ate, we breathed in the same rhythm again. And when Connor nudged the last slice of pie toward me, he whispered, "Dad, thank you for not giving up on me." I smiled. "You were lost, son, not gone." Connor lowered his head, hiding his wet eyes. As I left his home, my phone rang. Marcus. His voice carried the warm roughness of a man life had sanded down, but had never broken. "Jack," he said, "in March 2026, I'll be launching a community education initiative in Seattle. I want you to come with me, to help build its ethical foundation." I looked up at the sky. The snow had stopped. Streetlights glowed on the wet pavement like a scattering of tiny candles. "Why me?" I asked. Marcus didn't hesitate. "Because you know what it feels like to be pushed into a service hallway, and you know what needs to be done so no one else ends up there." I laughed softly, not a polite laugh. A real one, the kind a man makes when he finally stands in the right place. "Marcus," I said, "I've sat in the service area long enough. It's time I stepped into the front row." He laughed loud through the phone. "I knew you'd say that." After the call ended, I stepped back a little and looked down the quiet street, and I realized something. Life isn't measured by grand parties or beautiful photographs. Life is measured by the moments when we rise from the very place someone tried to push us down. And tonight, I rose. If you're listening to this, if you've ever been overlooked, pushed aside, or treated like you didn't matter, I want you to hear me. You deserve respect. You deserve your own place at the table in the front, not in the back. And if someone tries to push you down, stand up and take your place back. And if this story touched you, share and subscribe so you won't miss the stories that come next. Because sometimes all of us need this reminder. Dignity is not something you ask for, it's something you stand up and protect.